Welcome to Bible for Modern Minds podcast.
An incredibly compelling source. It's the first-hand account of a man named Nadir Sol Manfara who survived an attempted public execution in, well, one of the most dangerous places on earth for his faith.
And this is so much more than a survival story. I mean, it's a deep look at courage, at operational security, and what holds a community together under that kind of pressure. The account covers his life in Somalia right up to this dramatic moment in a place called Belwain Square back in March of 2017.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really get to the heart of this document. We want to understand what first started him on this path, the psychological triggers, and then how he and his growing community managed the incredible risks of living a double life. And of course, the main event. The specific, just astonishing things that happened in Belwain Square that saved his life.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We start in a small town, Harun, in Somalia. Nadir, our narrator, is a mechanic. His younger brother, Camille, who calls perfect in the story, is a student in a Quranic school. On the surface, everything is traditional.
But inside, Nadir says his faith was already starting to crack, and it's fascinating what caused that. He says the traditional prayers started to feel hollow.
Right. And he contrasts that feeling with what he was seeing every day, public executions, these really cruel punishments in the streets. He's basically wrestling with this fundamental question about God and justice.
And that wrestling, that internal conflict, it opened the door for something new. The spark was this old crackling radio his brother Camille brought home.
Yeah, this is such a powerful image. They're huddled under a heavy blanket, absolutely terrified someone will hear the static, and they're tuning in to a clandestine Christian broadcast.
And the message they heard was, it was revolutionary for them. It was the complete opposite of their daily reality. The voice wasn't talking about judgment or fear. It was talking about a God who does not seek your fear, but your heart.
Mm-hmm. And Nadir pinpoints the exact line that just shattered their whole worldview.
Yeah.
It was, God sent his son not to condemn the world, but to save it. He says that 20-minute broadcast was like a thunderclap. It hit them right then that the prophet Isa from the Quran was totally different from the Son of God on this radio.
And that realization came with an immediate and frankly terrifying choice. He's very clear in the text. To follow this new path in that part of Somalia, it was a death warrant. Simple as that. Imprisonment, torture, or death if you're caught.
Exactly. So that forces them into this incredibly complex double life, and it's so important we understand the psychological weight of that. Outwardly, they're perfect. They go to the mosque, they recite the Quran, everything looks normal to their family. But inside, they see themselves as children forgiven by grace.
The source captures the strain of that so well. Nadir talks about hearing the call of the muezzin from the mosque. And this sound, which had always meant peace to him, now he says it hurt like a reminder of something that no longer belonged to him. That split, that emotional divide, was something they lived with every single day.
And yet, even with all that danger, the community started to grow. By December 2016, there were 18 of them meeting in secret.
Which is a huge security risk.
Oh, a massive liability. So they had to get serious about OPSEC, operational security.
Yeah.
They immediately split the group into two smaller, safer cells.
And the technology that started it all, the radio, it sort of evolved. Physical Bibles were just out of the question. That would be suicide. So instead, they used secret files on our phones disguised as dictionary and translation apps.
The sheer ingenuity of that, hiding sacred texts inside these, totally ordinary secular tools.
And the vulnerability was always there. There's this one really poignant moment he describes in January 2017. A woman brings her two little kids to a meeting, and her 7-year-old son, his voice trembling, he just prays, Jesus, please protect everyone here.
Wow, that really puts it in perspective, doesn't it? This wasn't just about them. It was about the next generation. But the danger was ramping up. Rumors were flying about militias increasing surveillance, and then men were publicly executed in Mogadishu for distributing Bibles.
So the threat was becoming very, very real.
There was. So they found their own source of stability. They started reading Psalm 91 before every single meeting. It became their spiritual armor. They held on to this ancient promise that, disaster may be all around you, but it will not come near you.
But that armor couldn't protect them from betrayal from within. The informer was a man named Kareem, Nadir's childhood friend.
Yeah, and Nadir's actually careful about this in the source material. He says he doesn't think it was like personal malice. He thinks Kareem might have felt he was fulfilling some kind of, religious duty. But whatever the motive, the result was catastrophic.
The capture happened on the night of March 28, 2017. And the contrast is just so stark. The group of 8 is meeting at Rashid's house. They're talking about forgiveness, about the parable of the prodigal son.
And then it happens. The sound of tires skidding outside, heavy boots on the ground, the metallic click of guns. They were just overwhelmed, tied up, dragged out into the night.
Yeah.
And the moment of truth for the militia was when one of them found that Bible app on Rashid's phone. He holds it up like a trophy and just screams, "The Book of Heretics!"
The evidence was there. So they're taken to this warehouse, which is basically a staging area for the execution. The leader gives them one last choice, a huge psychological play. Renounce your faith in public, declare your belief in Muhammad, and you can live.
I mean, this is it. This is the moment they feared all along. When they call on Nadir, he just refuses. "I do not deny Jesus." His younger brother, Camille, is right next to him and says the exact same thing. That was the line. That was the boundary they were willing to die for.
And so that was it. The final public stage was set. They were dragged to the central square in Belwain.
To be made an example of. They're tied to these huge acacia stakes, ropes just cutting into their skin. A crowd of over 300 people gathers, shouting curses. 6 soldiers step forward, they load their rifles, and they aim.
And then the impossible happens. The sky had been clear, he says, a deep blue. But suddenly it darkens. And not like a cloud rolling in. He describes it as if a gray curtain had fallen.
And
Then the storm starts, but it's not rain. It's huge, violent rocks of hail.
just unbelievable. The hail is destroying tents, it's denting roofs. The crowd, the soldiers, they all just panic and flee, dropping their weapons as they run.
A hailstorm in the heat of Somalia is strange enough, but that wasn't even the main thing.
No. That was the detail that broke everything. The anomaly that just shattered the militia's authority. Around the 8 prisoners, in a perfect circle about 3 meters wide. The floor was completely dry, not a grain of ice. An invisible barrier, as Nadir calls it.
You just can't rationalize that. The militia leader, he's actually bleeding from being hit by the hail. He's trying to get control back, shouting, it's just a storm. But how do you explain a perfect dry circle in the middle of a deluge? You can't. His power just evaporated in that moment.
Exactly. The miracle didn't just save them, it shifted the entire dynamic of the crowd. The hatred turned into, well, astonishment and confusion. And that confusion created an opening. It created space for courage.
And 2 heroes step out of that crowd. First, a man named Omar, a fabric salesman. He just walks forward, ignores the leader, and he says right there in public, "I'm also a follower of the way," and demands they be released. He was basically signing his own death warrant.
And then an elderly, respected Muslim woman named Jabiba. She pushes through the crowd, kneels in front of the prisoners, and just cries out, "Teach me about this God who protects you." That act, her public witness, it just broke the last bit of hostility in the crowd. The leader, seeing he's completely lost control, just orders them to be transferred to higher authorities. He calls them sorcerers.
And that transfer order was the key. That was the opening the underground network needed. A man named Colonel Bashir comes into the story, a high-ranking military officer who was secretly a believer himself, and the story of the dry circle had reached him.
And he put a plan in motion, a very careful one. A fake transfer to Mogadishu. It was intercepted by an Allied convoy. These were UN white vans. They had lawyers, human rights observers, all the official documents declaring the prisoners to be religious refugees. The local guards couldn't do anything. It was all official.
So the group of 8, plus Omar, the brave salesman, they make it across the border into Ethiopia. They get to the Dulo Odo refugee camp. And their story, their attempted execution, it just becomes this incredible living testimony that he says spread quickly, from mouth to mouth.
But the escape, really, that was just chapter 1 of their testimony. Eventually, the group was resettled all over the world. Nadir and Camille made it to Toronto in February 2018.
And they didn't hide the scars. Camille still had these deep grooves on his wrists from the ropes, and Nadir specifically says they aren't wounds. He calls them badges of honor and trophies of their faith, physical proof that they paid a price and survived.
In the scattering of the group, Rashid to Minnesota, Amina to Norway, Ibrahim to Australia, it didn't break them up. It created this tight global network, all bound together by what happened in Belwain Square. That shared story is the glue.
But the ripple effect went backwards too, back into Somalia. 2 incredible conversions. Jabiba, the spice seller who knelt in the square. She followed them in faith and started a new secret cell that grew to over 30 members.
And this one is it's the most moving part for me. Nadir's own mother started going to secret meetings. She wrote a letter to him, and her final decision was, "The God who protected my children from the hail is real. I want to know him." I mean, the miracle reached right into the heart of his family.
Nader's final takeaway from the whole thing, even from the bitterness of his friend Kareem's betrayal, is really something. He came to see that the whole ordeal was a stage. He says, forgiveness in the end is the ultimate miracle. He believes the purpose wasn't to stop their suffering, but to use it to write this incredible public story of glory.
So after all that, what does this deep dive mean for you, listening right now? We've followed this journey from a secret radio under a blanket to a hailstorm in Belwain Square. It's a story that proves conviction, when you truly stand on it, can endure the absolute worst.
And the source is clear. They weren't saved because they were special. They were saved, it argues, because of the faithfulness they encountered. And this leads us to a final thought for you to take into your week. The source says, and I'm quoting, "We all have our own Belwain Square, that moment when we must choose between remaining faithful to conviction or yielding to the world's conveniences."
So if the point of that miracle wasn't just to stop the pain, but to turn it into this undeniable public testimony, then we'll leave you with this question. What might be the deeper purpose behind the smallest struggle or inconvenience you're facing right now? What story is being written through your pain that you might one day share as your own trophy of faith?
Something to think about this week. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.